Hello. In this video I want to give you a brief introduction to EDR and explain a little bit about what EDR is, what it stands for and how it might support you in your setting. So EDR is established in special and mainstream settings in Leicestershire. It ranges from early years settings right through to post-16 and it's adaptable to all those settings. It's built on the premise that school leaders and school staff are best placed to manage risk and lead behaviour in their own settings. Already works in a number of schools and we'd like to build that network. So the aim of this video is just to give you a bit of an explanation as to exactly what EDR is and what it can offer you. So first of all, EDR, it stands for Engage, Disengage, Re-engage. So when we think about engage, we're talking about how we engage with staff, students, parents, carers and agencies to establish positive behaviour and attitudes in educational settings. The disengage section comes when we start to address negative behaviours, and those might be negative behaviours from the inappropriate right up to the more challenging. So disengage gives staff and schools strategies to manage behaviours and to risk manage in particular, and that does include the use of force. The re-engage element of EDR looks at the processes that schools have in place to get staff, students, parents, families back round to the engaged side again so that they are demonstrating positive behaviours and attitudes. One thing to be clear on is that EDR is a framework, and that's easy to say and it sounds all well and good. But actually I think it needs a bit of explanation in terms of what we mean by it being a framework. And one thing it means is that this isn't a handbook or a manual. It's very much a scaffold. It doesn't prescribe what school leaders or staff should do. It just provides the foundations around which staff and school leaders can build their own policies and practices. So I like to think of it as like a trellis that you might put up in your garden. You put the trellis where you want something to grow, but the trellis itself doesn't dictate what plant you put in the ground. All it does is help you train and shape the plant so that it goes in the direction you want it to go. And I think that's a useful way of thinking about how EDR works as a framework. It can be used by classroom practitioners as a framework to problem solve individual students and their negative behaviours and attitudes, but it can also be used as a basis for leaders of schools or groups of schools to base their policy and practice on. EDR has a few cornerstones, a few things that are kind of intrinsic to the ethos that underpins the whole thing. One of those cornerstones is language and vocabulary. We believe strongly with EDR that the more we share our vocabulary and language and the more precise we are in the use of our language and vocabulary around risk management and behaviour leadership, the better that is for students and student outcomes, the better it is for keeping all people in schools, staff and students, safe. The second cornerstone would be around the law. A really good sound knowledge of the law, of most up-to-date legislation and guidance is really important for giving staff and school leaders the confidence to properly take ownership of their risk management and behaviour leadership policies and processes. If school staff know what the law says, then they can really go out into their work feeling confident. And the good news is that actually legislation and guidance on behaviour in schools and educational settings is really robust and really clear. So having that knowledge and sharing that knowledge with school staff and school leaders is a really big part of what EDR seeks to do. The third cornerstone, and you've heard me use the phrase already, is around risk management. When we talk about negative behaviour in school, we often get confused between behaviour management. We talk about behaviour management in schools, but actually what we're talking a lot of the time is around risk management and how we reduce the risk of negative behaviours having an impact on learning, having an impact on emotional well-being of staff and students, and having the potential to cause physical harm to other people and to property. So risk management is a phrase that we use a lot in EDR, and it helps us to separate from the fourth of the cornerstones, which is behaviour leadership. So Ofsted talk about behaviour and attitudes, and the behaviour leadership is our way of differentiating between the reactive risk management and the proactive behaviour leadership, in terms of what systems are in place in schools to promote the positive behaviour for learning attitudes, skills, behaviours that we really want to see, and we want to ensure that are embedded in our students going into adulthood in the future. EDR is built on 5 pillars, and very often in training you'll hear me and other EDR trainers saying that EDR is curated, not created. We've taken the best elements of well-established principles in terms of behaviour management across the world, really. So the first of the pillars is positive behaviour support. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail in an introductory video, but essentially positive behaviour support encourages school staff and school leaders to analyse negative behaviour and look to see what they can do to influence that behaviour. So it's the reflective practice side of risk management and behaviour leadership. The second of the pillars is behaviour for learning, which encourages schools to look at what systems and strategies they have in place to establish positive working relationships between schools, students, families and the curriculum. The third pillar is token economy, and really asks the question, are we set up to encourage and reward the engaged behaviour that we want? Are the right incentives in place, and are those incentives consistent across the board so that all students have access to them, rather than being in a situation where the students who are in the right tutor group get the right rewards, or who have the right teachers on their timetable get the right rewards? Is that token economy firmly established and consistent across the setting? The fourth pillar is restorative justice. And that asks the question, how are we repairing the harm caused by negative behaviour, and are we making the most of the opportunities to learn from the negative events that happen every day in schools? It's part of life that, you know, young people will choose the wrong behaviours at certain times and they will get into trouble, but are we using those as learning opportunities in the best way? And finally, the fifth pillar is pupil voice. Are we actively getting students involved in decision making so that they develop the skills to be active members of society now and in the future? It's clear that if students feel that they are part of their education and that we are all working together, and they can see what we're working towards, that they're much more likely to be engaged. So how does it work? Well, EDR offers training, coaching and support. The training is where our EDR staff come into your setting and deliver whole school training on your behalf. We would meet with school leaders first to really finalise what the exact content and material would look like for your school, and exactly what your school's needs are, and get an understanding of the context. School leaders would be very much an active part in putting together the agenda and the content for that training. The premium option is the coaching, and with the coaching, school leaders would identify a small group of staff who have the right skills and attitudes to lead on EDR in their own setting. Our trainers would come in and spend 2 days with them, training and coaching them, so that by the end of the 2 days they had the skills, knowledge, understanding to be able to lead on EDR going forwards in your own setting. This is much more robust, gives really good staff development opportunities, and helps to get EDR really established and really bespoke for your setting, and it's the version of EDR that I would recommend the most. The final one is support, and across the special schools and across some of the mainstream settings as well, we have EDR trainers and coaches who would be happy to answer individual concerns that might be from practitioners in the classroom working with individual students wanting support to help them engage in their learning, or it might be supporting school leaders who are putting together new policies and they wanted some advice on the wording and content of that. EDR is free to use, there's no license, there's no membership. If you wanted our trainers to come to you, or you wanted our coaches to work with you, there may be some cover costs involved, and there may be some costs for resources, but we aren't looking to run this as a business. This isn't a money-making venture for any of us. You aren't a customer, you're very much a partner in this, and going forwards we'd like to build our EDR network and have more and more schools involved and sharing good practice. Finally, if you are interested in EDR and you want to make contact with us, there are contact buttons all over the EDR website, and feel free to click on that and let us know a little bit about your setting and what your requirements might be. Feel free to explore the website, download any resources that you want and adapt them for your own needs. Thank you.